Hello and most welcome to H839. It's maybe the first warm day of March today. It's really pleasant and I'm sitting in a protected place in the sun enjoying the ambience. It's quite hot. I hope I will not break out into sweat. I'm enjoying at the same time looking at the flowers getting pollinated by the bees. This is a telling picture of spring coming along, and some of these bees are really heavily loaded with pollen that is going to turn into sweetest of honeys. Well, today is a rather pleasant thing to talk about as well, not only the weather, and is this rather marvelous book by Rodolphe Gachet. And it's not only a fantastic exposition of the philosophy of Derrida, but on top of that, it is a teaching of the method of deconstruction. And as Rodolphe Gachet writes, you cannot access deconstruction as a method through Derrida's books, because he does it by his own intention. Either he's looking into Nietzsche, or maybe he's looking into architecture or politics like in Marx. But when you do it yourself, you have your own subject, your own intention and your own doing. And it will not work to copy Derrida from some of his other projects, because your project is different. So what he does is to teach the method of deconstruction to the very core. And he does that with an rather incredible sharpness. He's using, as I mentioned last time, logic, which is a necessary communication tool, but it's not the essence of deconstruction. The idea is that you will leave, after have put the effort into the book, with a new ability, and that is to be able to deconstruct yourself and not having to sort of copy paste what Derrida done or some works of Paul de Man or similar. It is also most definitely a healing tendency. It's healing our oppositions that we have in ourselves. And as healing, I would say that is what knowledge is. That thing that heals you. And it takes you away from lack of energy, fragmentation, division, and all those other things that takes away the force of the text and takes away the force of the author, the doer, the writer, the actor, the architect, the cooker, you name it. Doesn't matter if you're a cook, an athlete, or a politician. Deconstruction heals everything. And now I can imagine you start understanding what a marvelous book it is, or what marvelous insight Rodolphe Gachet has shared with us. And I'm constantly thinking, when I read the book page by page, he could have kept that for himself. So it's a gift from him in a way. And it doesn't seem that he's written so much else book-wise. So it seems to be his legacy, his gift to humanity. And it's the mirror that helps. Mirror could be said to be the teaching tool, maybe equivalent of a cathedral and workbench, pen and paper in a school. The mirror is what aids our understanding, and the mirror is constantly returning all through the book. So the mirror is incredibly helpful, and it's something that makes you unstuck. I start to sense more and more how thinking has become stuck. And here comes the interesting thing. This is not my own stuckedness. Well, at least not only. It's a stuckedness that was already established when I was born and long before that. And I came like Dolbach and everyone else to see this stuckedness as part of reality itself. That the one-sidedness and the fragmentization is a trait of world itself. And wasn't that what Dolbach wrote about already in the 1770s when he came up with his natural philosophy that deemed the world godless, soulless, and without volition? So you see, the amnesis or the trauma of the Greek is something that has consequences. And lifting the veil of these consequences and revealing how they actually work is nothing but an extraordinary blessing. Something that will aid to everything you do, to everything you think and perceive. The looking for the original, for the pure, for the first, for something that underlies everything, for the looking of the arche or arche of the pre-Socratics. This is the stuckedness. We constantly look for the truth, what underlies everything, what makes everything tick, the clock of universe. And that was already set in action, always already before I even started to think and act. This is, of course, the picture that hypnotizes, as Wittgenstein mentioned. It is the amnesia of Heidegger. It is the logocentric movement of that Derrida pointed to in some of his literary works. But it's also a general stuckedness for us in common, ordinary daily life. And it's something that keeps us separate from our own living embodied existence. And it's a trauma hidden here. Trauma already established by the Greek. A trauma that leads to negativity, as taking away of the necessity of perceiving things and acknowledging that, our own existence, something most commonly completely marginalized within Western thinking. It's the perceiving, existing, embodied. Us, what is inside. And there is no doubt, and here of course there is a big agreement among many modern thinkers. That's the view from Nover and Thomas Nagel. It's also something Richard Rorty took up in his book about the mirror as well, and many others including him. But the mechanism of the whole thing, that is something I learned now from Rudolf Gachet. And I would say the 3rd of March, when I really got that insight, is a day to remember for me forever, I think. Because it was an immense realization that although I've been delving so deep into deconstruction Wittgenstein, it was almost still something lingering on. And that little thing lingering on did the whole action. I do not mean that all the other things were unnecessary. They were completely necessary. But this was really the last building block in understanding. It made it possible to go into the book of the mirror, the taint of the mirror, and see that nothing is tainted in the subject. And there is an odd morality that's sort of kept me prisoned, and that's the morality that the subjectivity in itself is something weak, bad, something that distorts, take away something of a wider, bigger, fuller reality, a reality where we all breathe, feel, and work in a more wholesome, comprehensive way, and where this lack is not present in the same way. And another view is that it is a sort of striving that keeps one's imprisoned by the idea that the truth is somewhere else, that the real arche, the essence, is something I need to reach. And it's a strugglesome path, unrewarding, unrelentless, and it sort of capture you day and night without giving you any rest. And whereas at the same time not giving you any reward at all. This is of course also the very dialogue of Socrates with Timaeus, where he tries to show that by almost eradicating himself, he can directly reach the truth that is objective, purer than himself, illuminating, and also alluring, which I think is rather seedy by Socrates, something that will enrich Timaeus' life. It will not, because the separation is what leads this path, this journey. It's the separation in the bottom that is the force. And the only thing is to do for Timaeus or anyone else unaware of this is to add even more extras, supplements. Hola! Jaså?
Jaså? Mira que me vean todo.
Sigmone, Sigmone. Macrio. Kilo. Åh. Nej.
Que iria dormir minha
Oh no, oh no.
vale.
Oh shit. Uff.
Aliás,
Ah.
só mataste que minha não sei que isso.
Nej. Hade, jaså.
Ela e café.
Café, nej.
Apoio-me.
Per i minute, penne minuto, penne lepta. Ok. Allora, termina. Ok. Ok.
Και 10 μαθές, no problem.
10, ok. Ευχαριστώ. And what is obvious in this dialogue is that Timaeus is scolded. He's driven by Socrates to search in the direction that possibly will not lead anywhere, will not get him to adjust, be happy, be fulfilled, be close to what is in his real location where he is. And this, of course, set Timaeus on the same perpetually moving movement from what is true away from it, up to the transcendental consciousness, as Richard A. Lynn would have said, or somewhere else that is not present in this now, not present for him. And now I understand so much better, or even better, I would say, without bragging, how this metaphor is so telling for what has captured us. It's not the metaphor by Plato about the cave itself, but it's a very good description what was already always present also for Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. And that is the idea of separatedness, being separated from the things that actually is invigorating, giving energy, and doing what makes reality come true. It makes us, descends us on a path that will never end, and it will lead to this friction, this stuckedness that entices us, is alluring, the absolute truth, the truth of Noam Chomsky that every language on the world is derived from one original language. Something I felt ridiculous, but we all have our own paths. What is ridiculous for Noam Chomsky, for me in Noam Chomsky, is I have other stuff that are pertinent for me, my own stuckedness, lockedness, and this is this very thing that Rudolf Gachet, especially in the first section of the book, so vividly describes. And I would say in me it's been an idea that if I lock everything else out and I just single out on one only thing, that will sort of be the key that unfolds the lock. And for me it has gone both ways. I've been casting out, what you could say, intellectually different things, saying those are not of the pure kind, those are not in the subject. But at the very same time, also in my living reality, where I am now, what's around me. What's behind me, what makes me two-dimensional, flat, without depth, that there is something above me and behind me, as well as there is something in front of me. This makes up the embodied wholeness, and that is exactly the same thing as whatever should be called mental or intellectual or otherwise divided. And this is, of course, the reason why we've been casting out not only the subjective but also the body as well. Nothing is worthwhile in the subjective. Neither is anything valuable in the body. The body's position, its balance, how it's feeling, if it's vigorous, the prana, the ki, all those things are completely non-existent. And if we go into the mind part, focus and being able to keep the subject, which is hard enough, I can say, is also not part of knowledge. It almost is sometimes when I really feel down and out that this knowledge is so barren, so sterile, that it will not even suffice to quench a thirst that is so little, minuscule, won't give you anything at any moment. And this is not what knowledge is. Knowledge is something soothing, opening up, deepening. It is wisdom, not only the superficialities of the transcendental. It is the very dividing moment. How everything comes to be different subjects. Look at the university, for instance. How many subjects? 200, and all are supposed to be completely separated and having nothing to do with each other, and having nothing to do with our daily life, and having nothing to do with our bodies. Society, politics, economics, they are already very limited from the beginning. And this is why the book is so important, because it goes to before the beginning. Because we are stuck in the a posteriority of what is already established. And that makes us actually exactly how Plato described the whole thing, chained. It is not the metaphor that locks us. It is what is before the metaphor. And actually I realize the metaphor that Plato made about the cave is just excellent to describe our current situation. It was an act of brilliance. It's just the underlying idea of the transcendental, which is already present in our experience. Because we need something. We need to supplement this complete lack. And there you have the problem. And now it becomes clearer that you should not exclude your own subjectivity, your own take on reality, your way of collapsing the superposition. That is part of it. And all your knowledge is part of it as well. What you do in your daily life, the intellectual is never separated from reality where it lives. By doing so, we do intellectuality a great dishonor and a disfavor. That is limiting it excruciatingly much. A wholesome knowledge takes the body in and makes it more balanced, makes you more healthy. How could that be excluded from knowledge? And how could knowledge exclude things like the upward movement, the balance, the agility in our system, the way to express us, to make ourselves heard, to make us happy? How could that be excluded? Well, it's getting easier and easier to understand what sort of trauma the Greek were victims of and also constructed, unbeknownst to themselves, because it had already happened by the time it was put in effect. It's not so hard to understand that the connection here between the T2 and the N2 neurons, the T2 muscle and the N2 neurons is immensely connected. There is a vivid, natural connection here. We tense up, we become shut out, we do not longer breathe free air because our whole breathing apparatus becomes locked down by the idea of trying to hold something and shut something out. I shut reality around me out. We all do that. We all children of the Greek established thinking, I would say. And it's been progressing more and more. And today, of course, maybe we're not striving clearly, or we cannot point maybe in the same way to the transcendental, but that there are always other things that comes up that are something that should be eradicated. People often mention today stress is an important thing. And I think stress is the idea of perfection. Taking stress away and you have a perfect reality. Stress should not be part of the world. So stresslessness has become the idea because we feel the tension in our bodies. We have already shut the minds out, and maybe it took a century until it really reached the body. And now it's reached the body and we are suffering. We invent this thing, stress, and say that is the scapegoat. We live in a stressful world. Well, partly it's completely true. Of course, all the fragmentization makes everything much worse. But how could it start there? If we are individual, we should always be whole. We should not be that weak. And knowledge should give us a protection, should give us sustenance to be whole. And there is no development, and that is already clear in the dialogue, of course. In the dialogue you see clearly Timaeus is not part of the process. He doesn't develop, he doesn't have to develop, because the knowledge is outside of himself in some weird way. So he doesn't get wholer, he doesn't get more knowledgeable. He had to make do with the knowledge that is already out there and constructed. And most certainly by Socrates or some of his predecessors. There is not per se any knowledge out there. That is part of the mirror reflection. It's just like the evil queen, mirror, mirror upon the wall, who's the prettiest of them all. Don't listen to the mirror. Don't seek perfection behind the tame. The logocentric journey is a barren journey. It's a rocky road, and it goes completely upwards. And the closer you come to the perceived goal, the steeper the path is becoming. In the end, it's so steep you cannot even traverse it. And you had to put your hands and your nails into the little rocks that sticks out from a cliff that is completely horizontal in the end. And you will never ever reach your goal. It will be like holding a carrot in front of a donkey. And the donkey doesn't know that the carrot is actually attached to a string, to a stick that is coming out from his own head. No matter how far he walks, he will never reach the carrot. And this is the stuckedness I'm talking about. This is how deconstruction actually heals us. Body and soul, soul and will, and God and reality. It is a healing, and it's not giving up of a path. It's entering a truer, more definite part where you are part of the development, where you actually do things that makes your doings better. And that's why it's so brilliant teaching out the method so you can do it yourself. With these tools you will be invincible. Nothing can beat you after that. Doesn't matter how the situation is put, or how the logocentric structure is divided, or it's some other stuckedness. All stuckedness now lose their grip. So it's away from the Socratic meiotic process and going into where the observer decides what interpretation, what meaning, what sort of collapse of the superposition should be. And we don't have to continue striving endlessly for hidden variables somewhere out there away from everything. It's a little bit like the TV series The X-Files. I think the subtitle, "The Truth is Out There." But this series never ever ended. It continued season after season. And they were in the series, Mulder and Scully, always pointing in different direction. Once one episode was over, a new path started in the next episode. So you never realized what was behind everything. It was just mysterious, shadowful, and unenlightening. That path we do not longer have to step on. We can find a wider, more opening path that takes your whole system into the equation. Your body, your soul, your everything. And I say thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you a pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.